What's up, everybody? Good to be back for another stream. Of course, it's that time of the season. We got to do a tier list because why not? You know, we gotta knock those out. We gotta tell people what to play, or not really tell, but like throw some suggestions out there, some ways to think about certain matchups and things like that. As always, I always promise to be as least biased as possible and present basically as much information that I know and not hold anything back. That's all I ever guarantee. And that's what we're doing, especially this time because I'm not even going to the event. So, got nothing to hide. It's all going to be out there. And, we'll see how it ends up. So, let me get caught up in chat. What's up, Bobby? Good to see you. Siphon, good to see you. Smoke in the chat. Tier list time, gang. Hot take, respectively. If you don't have KO higher than Zen, your tier list is objectively wrong. I think that's actually a very interesting point that I've given a lot of thought about. The comparison of KO and Zen. We'll see how it ends up, but I have made that comparison and given it a lot of thought, right? Because it's worth talking about, right? Did the bonds really set back Zen enough to where KO can not be the premier aggro deck, but at least be in the conversation of contending for it? It's an interesting conversation, right? If you don't put Verdance in S tier, I'm a flip. Man, I can't wait for the new set. I'm so excited. I absolutely cannot wait. I heard Willie B that you spent $40 to see he's got gloves and a knife. Yeah. So what happened with that story was back when Nam, Alex, and myself used to play CS:GO, we had an incentive to not suck. So every time we played, whoever did the worst was forced to buy like 10 cases. And I lost 2 times in a row, or I did the worst 2 times in a row. First one, I opened a $700 pair of gloves, and the second time I opened a $600 like knife or whatever, and then instantly sold them. It was absolutely hilarious. So that's the lesson on how to turn $40 into like $1,200. Don't recommend that. I got extremely lucky. The odds were against me. Yeah, I can't wait for the new set. Absolutely cannot wait. What's up? What's up, Jason? Bolton is S tier for sure this time. He's got some improvements. I respect the armory deck and what it is doing. I think that it does add some depth to him. But is it enough? We'll see. We'll see. Played a cash tournament this weekend and 3 different KOs went undefeated against Zen across the board. That's a decent data point, but once again, we don't know, small sample size, right? Small sample size. But we'll dig into it. Okay. So we got caught up in chat. Is Zareth legal yet? That hero is going to be so interesting because I'm really curious how, like, there's no character, right, that has been created in the realm of flesh and blood. Because if you look at the picture, there's like people, and they're like this big, like normal people at the very bottom of the photo, at like his feet. They're like, so he's like 100 times bigger than a person. And Flesh and Blood is like, or LSS is really good at like making things feel realistic. And that's why I really don't think they're going to let that hero equip normal armor. I just don't see it happening. I can't wrap my head around like some giant thing with Storm Strider Western boots on. Like, just something doesn't vibe, right? I don't know if they're going to dig that far deep into it, but they're usually like really, really good about those types of things. So Very interested to see how that kind of turns out. Very interested. But I would not be surprised if they do not let um, that hero equip like normal armor, like a giant machine energy source in a spring tunic. It just doesn't vibe. Now, KO in his tunic, we have to use our imagination a little bit, but we can at least get there, right? We can at least get there. Um, they are magical boots. They can be any size. I mean, that's based, but at the same time, you gotta, you gotta explain the other pieces. That's the biggest problem. But yes, I guess they are magical boots. They are magical boots. He's just got tiny minions. Hey, maybe. But I'm really interested to see where the armor goes. We've already seen the weapon, obviously, but very interested to see what happens specifically with that armor. I'm really banking on the fact that he has like his own Techo situation. Sorry, chat. Bear with me. Dropping frames for a sec. Just gotta fix it. Okay, we should be good. Okay, sorry about that. All right. So we have to do approximately like 60 seconds to 2 minutes of housekeeping before we get started on the topic of today. Obviously, the tier list. So let's go ahead. Sorry, the dogs are going crazy because Mama just got home, so the dogs are going crazy. She's going to fix that here in just a second, though. Just bear with me. They're super excited. Yeah, the TOGs. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping. There's some news that came up. I wanted to hit on it. I do not want to dwell on it. I don't want to talk any more about it. It's been discussed. I just want to mention something very specific. Let me switch screens because I don't like dwelling on this stuff. But there was a situation with Alex Sneed, former card guy, and Saint. There's the summary of the situation, right? And the one thing that I really wanted to do is, if you want, you can go and read and watch the video and everything to get the background and come up with your own opinion on the situation. But the big thing that I wanted to really get across is, obviously, Saint is involved with the Runaways team, and I really do not want anything that happened to spill over to those guys. The Runaway team is some of the best people I've met in Fab. Pat is one of my favorite people to talk to between events. He's like the first person I look to like shake their hand and everything. Dan, Cody, Naive, Jason. I mean, so many, Lucas. I mean, so many of them are just stellar members of the community, and I don't want anything that somebody else did to spill over and affect them in any way. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Please, if you do formulate your own opinion, don't let any of that spill over to that team. They're too good of people, and yeah, just it is what it is. So I don't want to dwell on it. I just wanted to put that out there because they're really good people, and they don't believe that they don't deserve to get hit by strays, right? So going back onto the tier list, here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be kind of doing it the normal way, if you will. And absolutely, Yuanji's the best, right? He did exactly what he should have in the video, and did what he could. So they're just all of them stellar people. So now we're gonna jump into the tier list. I don't want to waste any more time. I know that's what everybody's here for, and let's jump into it. So let's go ahead and swap screens. and go ahead and let's hit it. So we have a tiny bit of improvement since the last tier list. Basically, what we have done is we've added a whole new tier, and that is currently discussing, because previously what I would do is I would like drag the hero that I was talking about and I'd put them in B as I talked to them, and people thought I was actually putting them in B. Okay. So I would put them in B and talk to them, or talk, hopefully not to them, talk about them, and people thought I was placing them in B. So now we just have our own category of like what I'm currently discussing. So that way anybody that hops into the stream, they know exactly what's going on. I didn't want to leave it up to interpretation at the bottom going in order. Although I do go in order, I just don't want to force somebody to have the interpretation to assume that that's what's happening. So let's go ahead, and we are going to go from first to last. That is the goal. That's usually how we do it. But I do want to set some like relativity markers, right? That's kind of the goal that we want to do. Because starting a tier list from the beginning, going straight to the end, it can get a little weird because you don't know what you're comparing things to, right? You don't know the power. You know, I could say that this is really good into these heroes, but if you don't know that those heroes are an A and S tier, then the fact that it's good into it is kind of irrelevant. So here's what we're doing. Betsy is D tier, right? That's our first marker. I don't think that really needs I don't think that really needs a whole lot of explanation. I still have a running theory on Betsy as a hero. I think that Betsy was something that was really needed in the limited design. And you know, I'm not gonna say all of the hero, but most of the hero was really leaning toward balancing the limited aspect of heavy hitters. And some of that can come in the form of, you know, maybe it's not the strongest hero out the gate in CC, which is fine, right? That's okay. That leaves them room to improve heroes. If you look at Aelia as an example, right? That hero came out in the second set of Flesh and Blood and didn't become relevant until Outsiders, right? Which was, I don't know the number, but I don't know, maybe 7, 8, or 9. So like 6 to 8 sets later is when the hero became actually relevant, right? And now she's doing great things. She's considered by most people one of the strongest heroes in the deck right now. So it's just currently not her time. It's that simple. And that's okay. That's okay. What are we gonna find for B tier? B tier. As kind of like a marker. We just need something that just kind of marks what we are generalizing the power level around B tier. I think that Azuri would be a good example. I think Azuri would be a great example of B tier because she does some powerful things. She's actually a really good hero into a lot of the meta situation currently, right? The problem is she suffers from that situation of new just kind of does it a little better. If you really want to disrupt people, you want more. Hand disruption comes at a higher premium in the current meta than say Arsenal disruption or generic on hit effects. So therefore, new has more ways to leverage that ability and kind of execute it. And so it's not that Azuri is bad. Azuri is actually pretty good and can target Xin in a unique way if that's what you're trying to target, and really punishes Aelia, right? The problem is, I think new just fits into the meta a little bit better. That's simple. So Azuri, solid hero, but there's just a better option in that class. It's that simple. Let's go ahead and throw up an S tier. I am going to double down. I know there's going to be some people that disagree. Do I want to? I was leaning toward Aelia when I was saying that. But is Aelia truly S tier? I don't know. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to have to talk about that. I'm not 100% sold because the data is kind of leaning toward no. However, I got a extremely good counterpoint to maybe kind of there's something interesting on the horizon that might show up at the Pro Tour. Not that I've talked to anybody, but just where my mind's going. And there could be an evolution with Aelia that kind of proves to be really, really good. And so for S tier, let's do it. Okay. I still think that Zen is S tier. So obviously Bonds got hit, right? Blue and yellow Bonds. Basically, Bonds got turned into a red Majestic is the effectiveness of the ban, right? And I think that it was a perfectly fine ban as far as like how far. There is an argument of, some people were saying, oh, do a little bit more, do a little whatever, some people didn't like the fact that Bonds was hit, and that's understandable. But obviously, by the data, Zen was performing the highest compared to all other. And he needed a hit, right? And the interesting part is that hit it reduces the consistency a little bit. Well, actually, maybe it depends on how you go with the deck. It could, there's a situation where you build the deck where it reduces the consistency a little bit, but you get like higher block values and stuff like that. Or it could increase the consistency because you put cards in your deck that actually don't rely on anything else. But it reduces your ceiling a little bit, which was probably the point of the ban, right? But he's still a very powerful hero. He still does a very powerful thing, and basically everybody is going to be targeting Zen at the Pro Tour, and that's as they should. But the question is, how much of that sideboard real estate is Zen truly going to eat up as the margin comes down a little bit from the top? And it's actually pretty interesting. Is he the top deck? We'll come to that conclusion, but he's definitely up there. Once again, just because a hero is placed in that spot does not mean that they will stay there. They move around as we put more and kind of calibrate and stuff like that. So please keep that in mind. I'm just putting him up there as a kind of a benchmark, right? Those are very important. So now we're just going to start WTR and go all the way to part the Mistveil. Okay. Let's talk Bravo. Actually, I want to talk Rhino. I see habit, guys. I put him straight to B because I was like, oh, we're talking about him. Put him in B. No, we have this fancy category. All right. So what has historically been Reinar's main weakness? That is aggression, right? Aggression has been the weakness of Reinar because it basically invalidates the hero ability. Aggressive decks historically do not like to block. Therefore, intimidating a card while your opponent is on, or while Reinar is on offense, although he can intimidate on defense with like wind-ups and stuff like that. And maybe that's the direction. Maybe there's a way that Reinar can leverage wind-up value on Zen's turn to knock out key pieces. I wouldn't hold my breath, right? Because discarding on Zen's turn is kind of sus because you don't really get that much value. You just get the face value of whatever token is. You don't get the extra might like KO does or anything like that. You just get a pseudo flesh bag, if you will. So this just is not the meta for him. He's not terrible, but when the game slows down, people look at Reinar. That's historically how it's always been. Because anytime you, or like the last meta where it was very like mid-range soup and everybody wanted to block with 2 cards and send 2 cards, intimidating in that environment is extremely valuable, because if you take the right card, right, that extra blue, and they don't have a good way to get value out of it from Arsenal, that intimidate can be worth upwards of 2 to 3 value, right? So, but in this current meta, it just is not it, unfortunately. It just simply is not it. So, I got to put Rinard in C tier. He does some things, but it's not quite enough. I think he does have a lot of game into... Oh, don't tell me that, Smoke. Don't tell me that. You're right. It's on your action phase. I mixed it up with the Kano interaction. So if Kano's in the process of trying to kill you, you can discard a wind up, and chat, you are correct. Sorry. I envisioned the Kano situation, but then I didn't make the connection that Kano's killing you on your turn. So my bad, chat. Yes, you are correct. 100%. Reinard's ability is on Reinard's action phase. Sorry about that. That is 100% correct. So you can't do that. So you're just going to be bad in the Zen. Simple as that. Which is kind of why he's in C tier anyway. So it doesn't really change the placement. So then we have KATU. KATU was basically the innocent bystander kind of situation where he kind of got hit with a stray kind of situation. Although in the ban and suspended announcement, and he's getting something, right? I think Brian kind of hinted at him getting something in the expansion slot to kind of help him along, because he's having a little bit of trouble, and he got hit by the ban indirectly. So I just still believe that there's no true reason to play KATU. It's kind of the Azuri situation, but if Azuri is good into the meta, KATU's not really that great into the meta. So it's kind of the same situation, but a little bit worse, right? You obviously do have the really good on hits. You have the ability to kind of, have those dishonor triggers threatened and combat tricks to really force him through. The problem is all those matchups that go long where you really need like the mask double bonds play to really get ahead. You're really susceptible in that matchup, right? And it's even worse now because the ability to like double bonds is, and I don't want to say it's gone, but you have to like really set it up, and it basically, you can only do it one time, and it's almost impossible to like triple bond. You have to like really set it up, and the decks that you want to do it against, aka new Victor, stuff like that, they're not going to let you set it up, is the problem. So basically, KATU got a little bit worse into the stuff he was okay/good into, and he got way worse into the stuff he was kind of bad into, which is kind of not where you want to be. So KATU is going to go in the bottom part of C tier as well, unfortunately. Not too, kind of sad to see it, but I understand. Something had to be done with Zen, and a lot of people were experimenting with 8 to 9 bonds, and stuff was getting a little bit degenerate. I registered 9 bonds at Nats as well. A lot of people were kind of, figuring out that pretty good card, right? Even when a blue can come in for effectively zero cost, go again in like 5 to 6 value because it comes in for 2, and then can help trigger your Shuko and go grab another card. It's just insane value off of just the blue. And really good ban on the yellow as well, because it would have been very easy to just kind of slide into the fact that they could have just replaced the blues with basically the yellows, and it would have been like an easy. You would have had to like fix the ratios a little bit, but it still would have been able to produce the same output. So really good heads up move on banning both the blue and the yellow bonds. Where do you think he would be without the bonds ban? I think he would be probably, because you have to remember, KATU was never on like 9 bonds. He was usually on 1 blue for like mask purposes and maybe like 1 or 2 yellow, if my memory serves correct. Which I thought Rinard could do it on his opponent's turn, so maybe it's not. Who knows? But I think it would move him up to like the top of C, maybe the bottom of B, because you can kind of target Aelia, believe it or not, and you can like target Zen effectively if you have really high potential. And so yeah, I think it would help him, but it wouldn't like. He's not going to shoot up there, right? I think it would be a matter of like maybe he's at the top of C instead of the bottom of C, and maybe break into the bottom of B, but I doubt it. Okay, let's talk Bravo. Bravo's actually very interesting because I know 90% of you are thinking he's dog shit, put him in D, based on the premise that there's so much armor in the format and it kind of invalidates his strategy, and you would be correct. However, I don't know if this list exists, right? But let's use a hypothetical situation. If somebody could create a deck, a Bravo deck, that could somehow play into... You're obviously going to lose against Enigma. There's like no possible way. And you're probably going to lose in Kano. But as the Prism decks kind of lean more toward Celestial Reprimand and Angelic Wrath and stuff like that, maybe you can have some game into it. Or, it may it not be unwinnable, really. But if there's a Bravo deck that could fatigue Zen, and it had a small defensive package to outlast New, I think you have a real deck, like a real deck. The problem is I'm not too sure that you can fit all of that in 80 cards, which is why there are card limits, right? It's almost like LSS thought of stuff like this. So if somebody can come out and solve all of those problems, I think you have a really, really strong deck, like A tier at least. If you can find a Bravo deck that can routinely fatigue Zen, outlast New, through all the blue stuff, put on a lot of pressure, have the defensive options so nothing actually connects kind of situation. Because as long as you're playing reactions, stealth cards don't matter, right? It's when you start blocking with your blues. But if you're pitching them for staunch, shit don't matter. So if that deck exists, like I said, you're going to fold to Kano, you're going to fold to Enigma, but if that list exists, it's it has real potential. But I can't place the hero based off of what could be, right? I can say that that's something that I would try in my testing pipeline. If I was going to the tournament. And if it failed, he would go in D. If it worked, he would go in A. But I'm going to place him into D with the caveat that it could happen, right? I really think it could possibly happen. Okay, let's talk Darthia. Okay, Josh, earmuffs, Josh. Don't listen. She's bad. Unfortunately, Hatchet's Darthia, the game is not about slow turnover turn value. That's not what the game is about right now. There is value in playing that strategy, just not in the current meta, right? Especially with New, you can block down to your 2-card hand where it's your blue and your go against source, and then when she sirens calls and takes your only blue, you just like swing Hatchet and pass turn and you lose the game, right? So although Hatch's Darthia is actually pretty good into um it's pretty good into new, because you have, if you have all the defensive tools. Um so if Hatch's Darthia is not it, then what about Dawnblade, right? Because Dawnblade is the second direction that you could, well, I don't want to say second, or I do want to say second, but I don't want to say last, because there's a whole lot of other ways you could go, like Decimator Axe and stuff like that. But I think with Zen being about, I think you can't go Decimator. I think you have to lean on a card pool like Bravo that has a lot of disruptive tools. Like, not just the 2 for 6s, you need more than that in case they try to take up a setup turn or whatever the case may be. So yeah, Darthia. Dawnblade. Dawnblade is simply not fast enough. It's super unfortunate. Even if you build the deck and you try the whole triple swing strategy with what is it, Dust Path Pilgrimage or whatever the case may be, it's just not fast enough, if we're being honest. And you're also relying on a lot of pieces. Some of the top decks don't want to block you, so you get no reprise. If you're playing Dawnblade Door, you're like basically just rolling the dice on drawing Supremacy or Glistening to accumulate some type of pressure, because nobody gives a shit about your counter. If we're being 100% honest, no one cares. Simple as that. So, Darthia, once again, I gotta put her in C tier. A bit better in KATU, but WTR Heroes is looking rough. It's looking rough. We we need something. And Reinhardt just got a whole set. So, but like I said, I don't think Reinhardt is bad. This just is not the meta that he targets, and that's okay. That is absolutely fine. The other two are, Dory's a fine hero as well. I think Bravo and Bravo, it's not a meta issue. It's a these cards have been printed issue. Just everybody has access to like the fridge, and you have to play like your third Crippling Crush is the only one that actually matters. So, yeah, not ideal. Not ideal. So let's go into Arcane Rising. It actually infuriates me that Viscera is the worst hero in Arcane Rising. I never thought I would actually say that. It feels weird just thinking about it. But it's true. It's happened, and it's actually happened for quite some time. So let's talk about. Let's just get Viscera out of the way. Okay. Well, he's not empty. I forgot that I had a discussing now category. So Viscera he still does his aggressive thing. The turtle burst strategy was a legit valid strategy. The problem was it could only exist in the very mid-rangey meta that we were in. Currently, the aggressive decks have too much armor, so it kind of invalidates your first slogism into ascendancy. Or I don't want to say invalidates, but you just don't get the value that you should from it, and you just get behind too quick. So the turtle burst version of Viscera, it's just not its time. Reinhardt didn't get a whole set. He got like 3 cards, sure. But yeah, I think Reinhardt's fine. He just needs the right meta. I truly believe that. I think Reinhardt's a good hero. And so I guess we have to talk about just straight aggro Viscera. And we have a lot of people sideboarding Warmonger's Diplomacy. And that's because obviously Aelia is doing really good. And just innocent bystander kind of situation. And yeah, the output Runeblade historically is operated on the basically high risk, high reward kind of premise where they have a really high ceiling but can suffer from a little bit of inconsistency, right? And the problem is like the high roll of Runeblade currently is like an average Zen. So when you play Runeblade, you're basically taking a whole bunch of risk for absolutely no value. You're you're literally saying, "How about I play like a strictly worse Zen that has a card that just shuts me down?" And it's not a very good selling point. He still has decent damage output, can do some cool stuff, but it is what it is. Is there too much armor in the game right now? That's actually a very interesting question. That's actually a very interesting question. Is there too much armor in the game? Well, if you look at the current armor situation, a lot of classes in this meta specifically have access to 4 armor in both the head slot, not 4 armor total, in the head slot and the gloves via Stonewall Gauntlet, if it applies. But I'm just saying in this current meta, it applies to most heroes, right? Or the ones that you're specifically attempting to target. And then you have a slew of options to block for 2 in the headpiece, which is fine, right? And so your chest piece and your boots is kind of where someone could accumulate a quote unquote fridge. And we've seen Sash, and we have, Bolton getting even more armor. But he's warrior. He deserves it, right? But we just have a ton of block. But I don't want to say that it's a problem that there's so much armor in the format. I just think that it presents unique situations like with Bravo, right? And how do you overcome that, right? Because it's hard to go back. Like you can't let's just throw out the situation where you present just an overrate crush card, right? You haven't really solved the problem of there being a lot of armor in the format, right? And I do like that when they are putting in more armor into the format, they are doing it in a way where they're making it revolve around the talent, not just the class, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, the 12 petal chest piece is a mystic piece of armor, right? So it doesn't allow for, let me look that up actually, but it doesn't allow for basically KATU to just have 2 block in the chest piece, right? That's very important. I want to say it's Mystic. I'm pretty sure it's Mystic. Yeah. So and then Traverse is obviously Mystic because that's the whole thing, and then Mask is can't do anything with it, right? Although the head slot doesn't really matter. But if they kept printing just class armor, right? Kind of like Sash, then you start running into a little bit of an issue because then you have like the Shuko situation where it's just like plug and play, right? It's like, oh, I'm playing Ninja, boom, let's put in the Shuko, right? But if they start restricting it a lot more by class, then you just like, okay, a benefit of playing this talent with this class, I get access to that armor. So I think if they keep pushing the armor, as long as they push it directed toward talent and not so much toward class, I think it's perfectly fine. Just give Bravo some milk. He needs it. But going back to Viscera, sorry, I caught up in chat. Once again, not bad, but like probably there. God, Oh, I didn't want to put him in D just because I like him, you know. Um, not too much armor, but too much armor. They both give advantages. Oh, offensive and defensive. Right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. I think Bolton's armor is actually really well designed. It's like that good balance where it does give offensive and defensive capabilities, but they kind of trimmed the armor, made it blade break, you know, made you give up something, right? And it is a class that just deserves a lot of armor. You know, warrior just thematically would obviously have a lot of armor. So that's okay. I like pushing armor to talent leads into why would you ever play the non-talented hero? I mean, it could, right? But is that more the armor, right? Or like the new versus Azuri argument. If say Mask didn't exist and it was like just a slightly better whatever Azuri would use in some slot, I still think just off of the hero ability, there's always going to be a better option, and the better option doesn't necessarily revolve around the equipment. Sometimes it does, right? And that's okay. But there's always going to be a better option. Anytime there's a better option with a player base size that we have, players will find it out and they will zoom in on what gives them that 10% better edge or whatever the case may be, right? So this Rai ain't it. This Rai is not it. So let's talk about Dash. Dash is actually a very interesting pick. Basically, on my last tier list, I said that Dash was going to have a very slow start for the national season and then pick up at the end. That's exactly what I quoted during my tier list before the set dropped. And that's exactly what happened. Dash was nowhere to be found. And then once the people who were working on Dash figured out what exactly they needed to do, they built a deck that can do 20 different things, right? Much like how New has done, where it took a while to kind of zoom in and basically figure out what it was we needed to target. And Dash kind of did the same thing. Dash, said, okay, let's just do this hyper aggressive game plan. That's going to be kind of like 50-50 into Zen and see what happens, right? And it worked. But first, they needed something to target. And that's why I said that she would have a slow start and a strong finish, and that's what happened. But here's the problem. I know a lot of people will be like, oh, well, Dash must be like A tier or something like that. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. And let's think about this, right? Toward the ends of Dash didn't really come online till I think UK Nats, right? UK Nats, and then also I think it would, don't quote me. It was New Zealand or Australia. It was one of them. I don't remember which one. It was one of them. Was won by Dash. And that's what kind of like put her back onto the radar, right? The problem is everybody knows now. You no longer gain any sideboarding advantage. You no longer gain, people know what you're trying to do. Maybe they've, they've actually ran the math on the opportunity clause. Like I saw some mistakes of like running double null rune to play around T-Bone. And it's like, why? I just don't understand the thought process of like handicapping yourself because of what could be, but like just taking the hit up front anyway, right? And I think a lot of people are going to stop giving Dash that little bit of an edge and just say, look, if you got it, you got it. I'll give you the boots, whatever. We're cool. Although I do understand the risk, but you just can't give them guaranteed value no matter whether they play the card or not. It's very rarely correct to do so. And if you do, it's just like one piece, never two. So I think that since people know what is happening Not if I T-bone myself first. Well said. Well said. I mean, that's literally what was happening. I think it was the finals or something, and Zen was literally wearing AB2. I was like, what the hell is going on? Um, so yeah, I think people are gonna learn from that and basically come to the conclusion of like put you on better habit and you're gonna lose that value. And the matchup margin is so razor thin that that literally is like what you need to like execute that game plan. So I think that Dash is fine. I don't think she's amazing. I don't think she's warping the meta. I think Dash's best asset is actually the ability to target illusionists. I think we're actually walking into more illusionists, not less. And I think Dash is a great way to target that. So sure, Zen slowed down a little bit. I don't think it was a huge difference that's going to be extremely relevant as far as that's concerned. But I think she has a lot of game into the illusionist that we're going to see. And I'm going to put her at the top of B, but once we get A established, we might move her into A. There is a world where she could like creep into the bottom of A depending on how many we have. But tentatively, we're going to put her at the top of B tier. Okay, let's talk about Kano. See, I keep wanting to drag the heroes to B tier as I talk to them. We're getting used to the new category, okay, chat? We're getting used to it. So let's talk about Kano a little bit. How did the evolution in the meta affect Kano? So we saw more dash. We saw illusionists kind of gain some traction on like what they want to, because they didn't know whether to go more attack oriented or go more ward oriented or whatever the direction they needed to go. But I think now most people have a solid idea on where they need to land or kind of what equity they're giving up by going in a certain direction. So once that is easily identifiable, basically, I think Kano in the situation, it's a net negative for Kano. The total evolution. You have more illusionists, I believe, which is not a great matchup. I don't think the bonds affects your, if anything, it was usually a little risky for for Zen to play a blue bonds anyway. So maybe against actual like worse players, it could actually end up as an improvement because it will be less tempting to make that certain mistake in the matchup. So that's just one way to think of it. But I don't want to say it's like a total loss, but like I think Kano is going to get hit, right? Simple as that. Just the way the meta is evolving, it's just not looking. I don't think you gained any percentage points. The new matchup is. I don't want to say it's favored or unfavored, but what I will say is that if you're the Kano player, you have to walk in with absolute knowledge. It's like all the new player has to do is not stop breathing, but the Kano player has to like literally do integrals in calculus to like get to the end goal, right? And as long as like the new player doesn't lick their cards, they'll be fine, right? So it asks a lot on the Kano players. And yes, there's players out there that can do it, but the problem is there's just not that many of them, right? So I want to put, I think Kano is still solid, but depending on what lands where, he could be back down and B. He could be. He could be. We'll play it by ear, seeing what comes next. Okay. Okay. Aelia. Aelia is actually a very interesting one. I was very high on her during my last tier list, and she saw the representation that would support where she was placed. However, if you look at every single like mathematical measurement as far as placement, percentages, conversion, she did really bad. She did like really bad. And it's actually very interesting because I started like poking around and basically asking the question of where is Sandscour Greatbow? And I know that like Sandscour is better in the mirror. It's better at having consistent disruption. Also, I don't know if this is true. I'm just going over kind of the thought process as far as, you know, like playing Aelia into the Death Dealer new matchup is not horrible. It's actually pretty decent, right? But playing Aelia, Sandscour Greatbow into new, because it's very difficult for new to blow up all cards in Arsenal, and historically you just get um one, right? You can have double Arsenal a lot of the time and it still be perfectly fine, right? And so the point of that being that basically you can fight through your Arsenal disruption and hand disruption because you have more assets in different places, right? So like let me give you an example. Say you have like one arrow in hand and um not one in Arsenal or something like that. Then Death Dealer becomes very fragile. But Sandscour, you get to look deeper in your deck for the extra card. You get to double Arsenal if you have New Horizons. I mean, there's just so many different ways where you can kind of keep certain assets in multiple places to not necessarily protect them, but say, okay, take this card and I'm still going to outdo you on value and kind of just push through. Also, against aggro decks, historically, Sandscour has been a little bit better. You do sacrifice some raw throughput. However, once again, you keep your options open, right? Like you flip over a Remorseless and you keep those Snapdragon Scalers and you throw an arrow and they say, take it. And then you say, snaps, throw the Remorseless, right? And then it forces a card kind of situation. Whereas Death Dealer, that's much harder to kind of design. You basically have to incorporate the gloves. But if you're doing that, you're not playing around Warmongers, which could not be correct, could be correct. I'll leave that up to you. But the whole point of what I'm saying is I think that the current version of Aelia can be maybe changed and maybe lean into Sandscour Greatbow or something along those lines, or move more in a certain direction. Maybe not enough people were running Battering Bolt. Battering Bolt is such an insane card in this meta. It's literally a pumpable like weakest link. It's absolutely insane. So maybe there's a few adjustments that can get Aelia back up where she should be. Representation was solid, but performance was a little lackluster. But I still believe in Aelia. I think she's a solid pick that does something fundamentally powerful. Is she S tier? Maybe not. But for now, we're going to put her in the top of A. And so now we go into Monarch. Monarch's an interesting one. Okay. So Levia. Anybody that's seen the tier list over the past like 3 or 4 of them, I've been really high on Levia. The problem is nobody's playing her to prove me right, which is a problem. I need all of you to start playing Levia so I can be right. Because I know this hero is fundamentally powerful. I know this. Yes, there's some inconsistencies, but the problem is if you keep things at a small sample size, inconsistencies can have basically, it could seem a little off if the variance happens a little different, right? See, we got Man Sant, right? We got Man Sant in the chat. So he knows. I'm a believer. I think Levia is fundamentally powerful. Does some absolutely insane stuff. And I've been putting her in S, A tier for the past 3 tier lists. I still think that she can do it. She can go all the way. However, I'm tired of people not playing her, and it just makes it look bad. so I got to put her at what will probably end up being the bottom of A. If I had to guess, she's very strong. She's very strong. Yes, that's a better way of saying it. Inconsistencies can be overrepresented in small sample size. Thank you. Thank you. I've been talking already for too long, and we just started, chat. We just started. Okay. So, hot take. I think Levia will top 8. I think she will too. I think she could win it. How sick would that be? How absolutely sick would that be? I know Ethan would have a ball. Still in A tier. Oh my God. Zachary, I can't shake it. But I'm going to put her at the bottom of A. Maybe move her to B. I don't know. But I think she's got it. I really do. I think she's got it. She's fine into KO if it's a skilled pilot, right? Absolutely fine. It's just like a normal aggro flip kind of situation with Zen, maybe slightly unfavored. That's kind of any aggro deck into Zen specifically. With Husk and your absolute fridge, you have game into Aelia. You can kind of weather those really big hits. The new matchup takes a lot of skill, and I'm not going to say it's what you want to be playing against, but yes, the stealth cards banish your card, and you don't get to like fill your graveyard. Yes, I understand that, but there's some things that you can do, like block on the E strikes, the looking for scraps, the daggers. There's so many different things that you can do to gain small percentage points that if people actually leverage that, I think the matchup can be okay. It's not what you want to sit across from by any means, but I think it can be fine. So I'm putting her probably at the bottom of A at the end of things, if I had to guess. Let's talk Bolton. He just got some new cards, right? Got a whole fancy set of equipment. He got a bathrobe. He got a cool ass D-React. Like, cool as shit. And did it change anything? Is the question. That's the thing that we have to identify, right? Did it fundamentally change his placement in the meta, right? And so basically we have to look at how those cards apply to Bolton. And basically what the new cards do is for combo Bolton, I'm sure everybody's seen Josh's videos and stuff, but basically combo Bolton no longer has to ever attack the opponent, and they can get enough cards in soul to achieve what they're attempting to achieve, right? Which is cool, right? That is a net positive. Is it good enough? Is it still good enough? I would make the argument that it's not. For combo Bolton, I think that for combo Bolton, the fact that you no longer have to attack charge is not quite enough in this current meta. I feel like it's going to break a meta in the future. But this meta, I think the devs are so scared of Lumina that they looked at the cards and they're like, all right, they took like every new card, and they were like, all right, we need to make these cards help Lumina the least amount possible. That was like the check mark for every card, is like, does it help what Lumina is trying to do as far as like Saber's combo? And like, how do we minimize it? Situation. Or maybe they're just trying to crank him the hell up. I don't know. But let's talk about Raiden, right? That's another direction that you can take Bolton. And I think it is hands down almost every card in the armory deck, not the bathrobe. I think that's a little too far. That's a little bit of a pipe dream. But some pieces of the other equipment and definitely the D-Reactor are like huge pluses, right? For the Raiden deck. And once again, is it enough? And let's look at what we currently have at the top, right? Zen, Bolton has handled the ability of like your opponent not blocking you, right? And you being able to kind of navigate your turns, right? There were some turns in Raiden Bolton where you really needed your opponent to kind of like block you so you could use your soul for go again. But now like every piece of armor like makes a courage token, which allows you turns on your hero ability, or it, you can make a quicken token and just bypass it and save some soul. And there's so many different things, right? So you do, as the Bolton player, gain agency over your own turn on a turn over turn basis. But is that enough? And as for Zen, I don't think it is, because the really high impact cards like, Bolt of Courage and stuff like that, there's enough armor on Zen's side to kind of negate that, right? You can basically just not worry about the first 2 Bolts of Courage, right? And the Lumina on hit with Raiden is not that big of a deal. You would like to stop it, but 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be able to. So I'm not sure. Can you incorporate more on hits, like maybe more snatches or stuff like that? But I don't think positive disruption is the way to attack this current meta. I think you need some form of negative disruption for your opponent. And Snatch and Bolt of Courage is simply not it. But there is a very interesting Hatchets Bolton list that I ran into during national season, and I forget the player's name, but shout out to them. It was actually a very interesting build, and I think it has some potential. I think it has a lot of potential, actually. I think Josh did a stream on it. I don't know if it was recent or a couple weeks back, but he definitely did. It was a good list that as soon as I saw him play it against me, I was like, oh, that's what you're doing. And it only gets better with the armory deck. So I'm going to put Bolton into like a solid B tier. I can't put him in A tier. The one thing Bolton had going for him was with Soulbound Resolve, you have like a really good plan into like Kano and stuff like that, especially because you're kind of like, well, you don't even gain that much agency because you have to block with the armor. You can't do that. So really, just a normal like Soulbound Resolve game plan into Kano is pretty strong. But Kano, like I mentioned, was kind of going lower, right? So I don't know. I think Bolton's got to land on B. I think that's where Bolton's got to land. I can't put Bolton over Dash. I just can't do it. I can't do it. I want to be a believer. But I do think that if we see a breakout Bolton deck, I think it'll be Hatchets Bolton. That's my hot take. I don't think it'll be Raiden. Let's talk about 5. The other ninja that is not relevant. This is, it's kind of the same story as Katsu without the bonds, right? There's just fundamentally no reason to play 5. Zen just does it better. I can't think of a single matchup that we've placed up here other than maybe Fatigue Guardian where I would rather have Fi than Zen. I can't think of a single one. It's as simple as that. Like, at least Azuri is like better into Aelia, you know? Like there's a reason to play her over. There's a reason to play her over Nu. However, I can't think of a single reason to play Fi. I literally cannot. He's not bad. Like, he's always gonna be the 14 damage hero, right? He's gonna be the check, right? Like, can a deck do better than 14 damage? If the answer is maybe, Soul Bond. Bond equals light, bound equals shadow. Holy shit, I didn't know. Soul Bond resolve. It even sounds better. You're right. You're right. But yeah, can you beat 14 offensive value every single turn over turn? If the answer is yes, then Fi is completely irrelevant. If the answer is no, or even maybe, then he like enters the conversation, right? The game of Flesh and Blood has not been in that situation in quite some time. Ever since, I mean, I know Fi won Worlds, but I think that was on the back of kind of Illusionist, right? Specifically Dromai, right? That was kind of like the reason to play Fi. And Fi, of course, is good into Enigma, right? Because you can very easily kill the ward and stuff like that. But you are actively worse into Prism, I believe, my opinion, than Zen, right? Because Zen, I think, has a lot more explosiveness, which you need in the matchup. You have higher blue count, so less opportunity to brick, and you're discounting Leyline Fi. Yes, I am, Nick, and that is on purpose because that ain't it. That ain't it, Chief. So once again, like, Fi does something solid, but it just isn't relevant in this meta. It's that simple. So I'll put Fi at the bottom of C tier. Once again, just a damage check. Can you beat it? And most of the decks here can. Is it all on offense? No, not really. Like, this gets its value from disruption. This gets a lot from blocking and stuff like that. But most people are exceeding 14 value on a turn-over-turn basis. But Leyline is a 6 value card. Boy, is it. Arachne. Riptide. No, I'm not going to do that. Oh, Arachne. Same situation as Fi. So there's a okay. So once again, a little bit of context. This is my first trading card game. I played a little bit of like kitchen table Yu-Gi-Oh, but other than that, like, this is like my first like real try at like a TCG. And when I saw Arachne the first time, somebody explained to me the concept of mill, right? And I was like, that's the coolest thing ever, right? You're like throwing cards off the top of their deck, and you're like disrupting them in like this very passive way. And then I had a light bulb, right? And that is the light bulb. If you lose the game and they have one card in their deck, every mill you had in the game had no value. Literally zero. But if they run out of cards, then all the cards you milled, right, have almost an infinite amount of value, right? And so I made the connection that it's basically a combo deck, right? I don't want to use that word like too. It's not setting up for like one big thing, but either it achieves it or it doesn't kind of situation. That's the combo aspect that I'm referring to. And there's just not a lot of decks in the format that are going to allow this deck to achieve that combo, quote unquote, state. And yeah, it just ain't it. Is Bravo worse than Arachne? At least Arachne has Codex. Nah. Fatigue Bravo. They'll find a way. They'll find a way. We need you. Arachne needs a spec that has plus X power, where X is the number of cards in target. Banish them. That would be awesome. That would also be broken, but that would be an interesting way to and let me preface this with like new is a unique way to bridge the gap and make mill not a combo, right? New is like this mid-rangey hero that has like an end state that she can play to extract more value. Where every single card that is milled can have a form of value even if they don't run out of cards. So I think that was a very neat way to do it. But as far as Arachne, it's like, yes, you get the silver and stuff. Like, congrats, but it's just not enough. It's just not enough. I think we know that. So let's talk about Riptide. I'm basically an expert on this hero. I played this hero for 24 hours, won a pro quest, right? And then played a couple games on stream. So I basically have a PhD on Riptide, right? And obviously that was sarcasm, by the way. However, I will say that I put Riptide in A tier last time, but I put an asterisk on him. I said that was predicated on him being favored against Zen. And that is no longer, or I don't think he's like favored into Zen. After the post ban, is it close to 50-50? Maybe. I think it's a little worse than that. Maybe like, I don't know, 40-60, something along those lines. But other than that, if you look across the board, he's actually got a pretty decent matchup once we kind of like set things up. He's pretty strong into KO. Decent, right? He's a dog into Victor. Absolute dog. But he's really good into New. Really good into Enigma. Has some tricks that can be played against Prism. Fair into both Aelia and Zen. Really bad into Kano. But like I said, Kano's kind of working his way down. And then Riptide's really good against Dash, right? So a lot of these top heroes, Riptide's actually really good into. So I'm going to double down on Riptide and say I'm going to keep him in A tier. I think that his matchup spread is just good enough to stay in A tier. Which specialist would I be more intimidated by in a tournament tomorrow, seeing their hero being Arachne? Arachne needs to have a spec that makes your opponent royal. That would be insane. As much an expert as any of them. Yep. Rippy looking drippy. I can get behind that. No, the matchup spread looks solid. He does something that's it's good. I'm gonna shy away from like fundamentally powerful, right? It's no Aelia, right? Let's slow down a little bit. But I think he is an extremely respectable hero that I wouldn't be surprised to see in top 8. I don't think it's like a power level thing. I think he just slots into the meta very well because he can really pick on Enigma and New specifically. So it's a very unique way to kind of like pick on New, but not really suffer against Zen. Slight underdog maybe, but like not that bad, right? is kind of the idea. Does the tide roll? Oh man. So I'm going to put Riptide in A tier. I'm gonna double down. I'm gonna double down. Okay. Let's talk Vinnie. Let's get this out of the way. Out of all the heroes that I post on a tier list, this is the one I catch the most flack for. I mean, there's some ballers in the purple Discord, right? And Vinnie has her fan base, and I respect it. I respect it. And so here it goes, already in chat. So, all right. So Vinnie is clearly the best Runeblade in the game, which guarantees her C tier, right? And on a serious note, the red line list is actually very respectable. It actually does. If you look at like the ability to block, just the throughput, the ability to lean on the one card eulogy plays, just so many. It does have the Runeblade situation, right? Where it can be a little inconsistent. And if you play against somebody that knows a lot about the hero, you lose a couple percentage points. But that's kind of every hero. But Vinnie, it's a little bit worse. Not too bad. Not too bad. It's not like Dory or New, but like in between. And the red line list, I think, me personally, is the only list of Vinnie that I would take to a competitive event. Me personally. That's the one that I would take. And I think it does a respectable amount of throughput, and it has relevant on hits in the form of Mauvrian Skies and very unique lines that can present a lot of damage that seemingly could come out of nowhere and close a game, right? Which is powerful, right? In certain decks. The problem is how does she fit into the meta? Let's run through it, right? Aelia is kind of sus. I'm not going to lie. I think she just outvalues Vinnie on a turn-over-turn basis. Kano's a little iffy. You're obviously on red line, so you don't have a lot of pitch resources. You can try to Amethyst or do something crazy or Spell Void or something along those lines, but the problem is you literally... They can respond to the Amethyst or the TR or whatever it is. And you're decent into Riptide. It's not that bad. Actually pretty decent into Levi. You can kind of force thresholds for like flips if they're actively trying to flip. Zen's a little unfavored, but once again, not terrible. It's not terrible. And so it's one of those decks where you do kind of pick on the illusionist, and that might be the angle, right? That might be the angle of the deck, is you're just trying to kind of pick on the illusionist. I think that if you are playing Vinnie, you really need to play against some really good illusionists, because it's one of those matchups that it seems very free, but it's actually not. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that it's not as free as it could lead on to be. So I'm torn between putting Vinnie at the bottom of B tier or the top of C tier, and I'm going to lean toward the bottom of B. Which means she's moved up 2 ranks in 2 tier list. She went from D to C to B, right? I think that the red line list has a lot of potential. I just think that Zen's a little too quick, a little too fast. But once a couple heroes rotate out of the meta, and she gets maybe 1 or 2 more cards, could be the real deal, right? Maybe she can extract something from Rosetta that kind of puts her B for baller. We'll take it. But I think she does something that is solid. Is it breaking the game? No, but it does something solid, which I think is fair for a B. So let's talk about Prism. Let's talk about Prism. I put her in S tier, at the bottom of S tier in my last tier list. And she had decent conversion rates. Not like a bunch of wins, but the representation was low, which we know. We know Prism is one of those decks, kind of like Kano, where it's very difficult to play. The representation historically will be very low. But the heroes that really know the ins and outs of the interactions and stuff like that will really be able to extract maximum value and really make a showing at a tournament. And I don't think my stance on her has changed. I think Prism, if you're not packing 6 power poppers, and here's the thing, you might be packing the 7 power poppers, but like, even if you are, they might not matter. Whether it be the Halo play of throwing in, I think it's Triumph that -1 on their attacks or whatever, you can like pop that on a Triumph and have -2, so you really need an 8 kind of situation. There's just so many things and so many tricks that players can really get punished by. And I think all of the attention right now is on New, right? I think everybody is formulating solid game plans against New as a hero. And kind of, we're starting to hit that point to where, do I really need those? This Sync Blow would be really good against New. Do I really need that Blanche or whatever that 7 popper is? And some of them might start sliding out of the sideboard. And then you might run them and get Angelic Wrath or Celestial Reprimand anyway, right? So you just don't know. I'm going to stick with my stance on the fact that I think Prism is very solid. I think that Prism will remain in S tier. That's my personal opinion. I think she does some very powerful things. I think the free match into Kano, the solid one into Aelia, this I think is like a 50-50. And if the Zen player doesn't have any tech for it, it can actually be like, if you don't have like 7 power poppers and you just have like CNC is like laughable, right? Like I think Prism is S tier. I really do. I think Prism's got it. Expect it. Obviously, the representation won't have S tier representation. We're not going to see 20% Prism. There's no shot that could ever happen. I don't want to say ever, but it's very unlikely. But I will say that simply, she's really good into the meta. Other than the Brutes are going to give her a run for her money, but we'll see where they land. I've already talked about how the representation on Levi will just be low because nobody's willing to roll the quote unquote roll the dice, but we'll see. Techo, just not his meta. He does something that can pick on a certain type of meta. And we started to see that toward the end of the heavy hitters season, where yes, it does require very high it has a high skill cap or requirement, if you will. I do agree. But I have to base everything off of like maybe not the best Prism player on the planet, but like all these heroes have to be ranked as like fully competent on the hero kind of situation. Maybe not the best, but like top 10, right? So Techo, I put him in D tier just off the rip. I mean, that's where he's going to go. Let's not kid ourselves. But I want to explain why. I want to, because I don't want to just say he's bad, because he's bad in this meta, but he will have a point in time where he can thrive, right? And the best thing that could happen for Techo is actually Rosetta. Hear me out. All the wizards have kind of shown that they're not that they have shown, right? I can't say we haven't obviously seen the cards, but like off of what we've seen, I don't see either wizard just up and killing us out of nowhere from 20 or 30, right? It seems like these wizard games are going to be much longer, which means AB that you attach could actually make sense, right? Instead of Kano, where he can literally just kill you on the stack of you trying to equip the AB, which is just funny thinking about. So, but more importantly, at the end of the heavy hitter season, we saw where the game got to a mid-range point, and Tekla Volson was able to go to the extreme side of like value fatigue, dirtle, whatever you want to call it, and really just bully everybody that was trying to do that. And like, so he's just waiting for his window. He's kind of in that Rinard situation where he is just basically, yeah, look how far, yeah, exactly. Look how far Riptide has come, Aelia has come. He's just waiting for his moment. Tekla Volson is not a bad hero. Betsy currently is a bad hero because there's not a whole lot of value extracted from the hero ability, right? And the hat's just not enough. But Tekla Volson has something solid going for him, just not the right time. Simple as that. It is just not the right time. So I would put Tekla Volson probably right behind Viscerai, is where I'd kind of put him. Maybe behind Bravo. Just nobody's dirtling, right? Everybody's killing everybody really quick. The last thing you want to be doing is doing a ramp equip style deck, and you die before you actually get going. Just doesn't fit in the meta right now. Simple as that. Max I listed as my dark horse because I thought that there was a way that Max could kind of pick on the Kanos and the Illusionist and have a decent shot into Aelia, as long as you can get the transformation off and kind of like play that mid-range game plan or tempo or out from that point. The problem is Zen's not giving him enough time to transform, and I don't think Bonds has really changed. However, if you look at the spread, Max is like maybe slightly unfavored here, favored, probably unfavored. Probably unfavored, favored, unfavored. Okay. So he's just not doing a whole lot into the top. So just not doing it. Just not doing it. As far as placement, probably would land at the top of C is what we're going to go with for Max the Hype Nitro. Just a lot of these decks are either killing you doesn't involve, like Kano just killing you doesn't involve the transformation in any way, and or the other decks are too fast. You are going to pick on Illusionist and Wizard, but other than that, just the rest of it, you're just not that great into. Max is a very good deck if you want to just roll the gem dice kind of situation. That's kind of how I see it. All right, let's go Dashio. Dashio is a very interesting one. So, theoretically, you're amazing into Illusionist, right? Theoretically, you're good into Kano. Your brute game is okay. Max is good into Riptide. I mean, yeah, Max eats Wizard and Illusionist 100%. But I think the number of Illusionists are going up, but unfortunately it does offset a little bit because I think Kano's going to be slightly less represented. But Dashio being good into Illusionists has the potential to try and race Zen. But objectively just worse into Aelia, as far as, yeah. I think so. My problem here is I don't think Dashio is bad. I just think that the way the meta is moving, I think that dash IE just targets it better. Kind of does the same thing. High Octane is more than enough to beat Illusionist, right? And I don't think you need the extra help. So I'm going to put Dash IO kind of at the bottom of B. Not a bad deck. Really has the ability to target Wizard and Illusionist. But against everything else, I would rather probably just have Dash IE. Simple as that. Not a bad hero, but kind of suffering from the Azuri problem where there's just a better option. I think Dash IO is a big sleeper. I would love to hear the reasoning. Once again, I don't think it's a bad hero. I just don't understand, like, other than maybe Illusionist, Dash IO, because you have more access to the action points instead of just the boots. You can run the adaptive plating and stop Aelia. Yep. And then also you have the access to what's the item that makes it where they can only play one on attack. I forget what it's called, but yeah, there's a ton of things that people have access to, specifically mech. I just don't know if it's quite enough. And I also think that the representation on Aelia specifically is going to be a little bit lower than it used to be. Also does 50 damage in 2 turns too. Yeah, it can. It can, absolutely. I just don't think it's as consistent as, say, Zen. Signal Jammer, that's it. The Signal Jammer, thank you. That's the one I was thinking about. So, I do agree that we could see a strong performance. I know Mars had a lot of success with the hero, but at the end of the day, I would just rather play Dash IE. Simple as that. Okay. Kasai. I made a mistake last time. I put Kasai at the bottom of A tier, and it's just not true. The hero does not. I thought that there was a build that could have, like, leaned a lot more aggressive and actually give Zen a run for his money, but it does not exist. Kasai is actually like the last dual wielding warrior you would play. I would rather play dual wielding Bolton and Darthia. I think Kasai is a little bit better than Olympia, but like, just Kasai is just not doing it. So I'll admit on the last tier list I was wrong about Kasai. There's nothing actively you want to be playing against. You don't want to see Kanos. You don't want to see Aelias. You don't want to see Riptides. Levia, you don't want to really see. And then Zen's going to run you over, and Prism is rough, right? Like, it's just not where you want to be. So, once again, solid hero. I mean, what, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, this hero won a calling, right? But once again, it's just not the meta for that hero. Not that it's a bad hero, just not the meta. So for Kasai, we're going to put her in, I can't even put her in B. It has to be, it's got to be C tier. Probably a little bit worse than Max, but better than Rinard. I think Rinard is actually better because you get the Illusionist game at least. Better than Dory? I don't think so. Better than the ninjas? Sure. We'll put her there. I forgot Olympia existed. Sorry, Josh. Says everyone always. Speaking, let's just knock Olympia out the way, so it save us some time, right? Olympia is definitely in D tier. We got to figure out where. Probably a little bit just because you're a dual wielding warrior. You win some matchups. Better than Tech Glow. Worse than Bravo. We'll stick him there. I don't need to hash into it. Changing your clothes mid-match is not enough. Simple as that. It is neat, and it may have its place in a meta in the future, but that meta is not one that's very, very fast. Simple as that. Simple as that. Now, we're going to slow down on this tier list because the next 4, and I need you, chat. I need you here because I have some thought processes. I could be wrong. I'm open to it. But I have some theories and thought processes of like how things could kind of like evolve, right? And these next 4 heroes are all going to be very impactful into the meta and how they kind of slot in, right? So we're going to slow down and discuss a little bit more in my reasoning and stuff like that. And chat, feel free to check me and, whatever. Let's talk about KO. Let's go ahead and knock this one out because it's very important. We need it as like a measurement for Zen and whatnot. So somebody at the very beginning of the stream said that basically KO beats Zen. And I thought about this. I do not necessarily agree with that statement. Is he better into Zen? Absolutely, 100%. Does he beat Zen? I don't think he does. Even if you like tech really heavy, weakest link, amnesia, maybe even. There's Brad. KO best tech in the format. So that, for a second there, right? When I was going through like my initial thoughts around the meta and just kind of gathering my thoughts earlier this week, I asked myself that question. I actually talked to a couple people in the Discord about it. And I was like, how is KO the best deck? Because I was like, you're solid into like Illusionist, not really Enigma. That one, it depends on how the Enigma deck is built. But if they're like really ward based, it can get pretty rough pretty quick. If they're attack action based, you're fine. That's basically how it lands. And then you're good against Prism. And Zen, you're like close to a 50-50. So let's basically go match by match and compare KO to Zen. Okay. Zen into Prism, I would rather be KO. Zen into Aelia, I would rather be Zen than KO. Right? Warmongers both have fridges, but you just have the ability, if they ever have a step off or like a turn off, you have the ability to just punch. And it's based on your armor, not the cards you draw. So I would rather play Zen into Aelia than KO into Aelia, me personally. Into Kano, I would rather play Zen over KO. So that's 2 for Zen, 1 for KO. Against Riptide, I would rather play Zen. Plain and simple. I think that Riptide can actually prolong the game a lot better against KO than he can against Zen. Against Levia, I don't think one really gets a way bigger advantage than the other. I would say that Zen has the ability to shorten Levia's clock a little bit quicker, which could prove advantageous. Depends if Aelia convert. So I mentioned when I went over Aelia that I think everybody will be on Battering Bolt. But I do agree with what you're saying, 100%. And part of my decision is based on that assumption, right? I think every Aelia at Pro Tour will have 3 Battering Bolt because the card's just that good. So just in all these matchups, except for Prism, I would rather be playing KO, and even Enigma, I would rather be playing Zen. Although new, I would much rather be playing KO. And against Victor, I would much rather be playing KO. So it basically comes down to, what do you think there will be more of? Is there going to be more Victor new Prism than there is Aelia, Kano, and Riptide? I would say, yeah. Right? No. The comparison would be Enigma, Aelia, Kano, compared to New, Victor, and Prism. So Prism should have similar representation as Kano, so those kind of cancel out. Enigma and Victor will probably have similar representation, so those cancel out. And then New and Aelia, there's probably more New than there is Aelia. So theoretically, on a numbers basis, there's a world where KO could have a better matchup spread. It's just where do you think people are leaning? I personally think that I think it all hinges on Enigma. I think if Enigma becomes highly represented, then Zin's the better deck. If not, KO is the better deck. So I do respect the idea that they're at least in talks of contending with each other. And I think it literally comes down to what you think is going to show up at the Pro Tour. I'm trying to justify why Zen. Is there anything in B tier that we really care about? Like Dash? Both of those decks are fine. And I mean, KO's kind of bad into Dash, to be honest. I think the Tau Short data even supports that. Let me see what chat is saying. I think KO is a surprisingly good matchup spread, but I think he's unfavored into Zen, which isn't where you want to be right now. Depends if Aelia converts to battery, but yeah, they definitely is. I think Zen is slightly better into Levia. Yep. Also, a good chunk of KO players at the highest level say Zen is much easier for them than KO. Just something to consider. Also, earlier, I wasn't saying that KO just beats Zen. Oh, 100%. 100%. So, I think that the reason that Zen is the better deck is because KO against Zen is in favor. I think it's that close. That literally that specific matchup puts Zen ahead. But I agree, it's very, very close. It is very close. And I'll put KO at the top of A tier for that reason. I don't think he's quite at S. I don't think he's quite at. And maybe he can break into S tier, depending on where these three go. But Carol over at LSS will absolutely flame me if I put more than 3 heroes in S tier. So I can't. I'm limited to 3 up there. Okay, so you got to work with me, chat. You got to work with me. Man, KO better than Zen. Is he? Is he actually? All right, we'll put him as a placeholder in S tier. Placeholder in S tier. Okay. God, it feels so wrong, but facts are facts, right? Let's talk about the other 3, and we'll kind of look at it, compare it, whatever, and maybe change it a little bit. I won all my Zen matches with KO at Nationals. 3 Amnesia in sideboard. It was pretty chill. Yeah, but Amnesia got strictly worse with the bonds going. Something you got to keep in mind. Like I said earlier, the 1K Saturday, KO went undefeated against Zen across the board. It was a small sample size. Yeah, of course. So let's talk about Victor. Victor obviously is going to be a absolute dog into KO. That is it's not actually that bad, but it just feels that bad. I think it's like a solid 35-65 kind of matchup in KO's favor. Victor's obviously good into Zen. It's kind of the reason you would want to play him. Victor can be good into Aelia. It's not as convincing as you would think. Depends on how much D-React support you run and like when you draw your choke slam. There's a lot that rides on it. It's not a very simple matchup. Obviously, Kano is going to give you trouble, and Riptide is just a free win. And Levia can be a little bit rough because she can just really outvalue if they're really good. It is a skill check for Levia. When all my new and specifically against new, obviously it's going to be a little bit rough, and then Enigma is rough if it's ward based. If it's the attack one, it's not that bad. So Victor's going to play a huge role in the Amsterdam meta because he's going to attempt to keep Zen in line. The problem is post-ban, will there be enough Zen to warrant bringing a deck that targets strictly that? Because there's not a whole lot up here that you really want to be targeting other than Zen. Because I don't think the Aelia matchup is like that good. I think it's favored for Victor, of course. But like 60-40 tops, right? You're bad into KO. The Prism matchup is such a coin flip. It really is. And then KO's bad. Like there's some dicey matchups up there, right? There's some dicey ones, is all I'm saying. So Victor has his place in the meta. And then, of course, Victor's going to dumpster most of all the decks down here. Like, the problem with the Pro Tour is things consolidate up. So, basically, Victor's time to shine was Nationals, which he did have good conversion rates. He did, have a successful season. But as things consolidate upwards, right, the higher tier level event you go to, he should do worse. He's not going to do bad, but he should do theoretically worse. And for that reason, I'm going to put him as kind of like a role player at the bottom of A. There is a solid reason to bring him, but it may not pay off. Simple as that. MST season, Zen got 445 points and KO got 75, and Enigma isn't played much yet. Yeah, I mean, during national season, there was no contest that Zen was better. I still think Zen wins against KO. I think that Zen is favored, but the margin did decrease, right? Now, next we can talk about Enigma. Let's talk about Enigma. I think that Enigma is one of those decks that really gains a lot of value from knowing the meta and knowing how to build the hero to target certain things in the meta. And I don't know which way that they have landed. I think it's still kind of a split decision, but once again, I'm not really an Enigma player, but I think that the ones that are going to double down on the hero will come to a solid conclusion on how to attack it, whether that be more ward based, more attack based, whatever the case may be. I think that she will have a way to attack the meta in some way. Is it enough? That's to be determined. That is to be determined. But where things currently stand, she's solid, but last time I had her at the top of A, and she had a really strong start to national season. I think people got a lot of reps into her that were extremely, extremely valuable. Riptide, I think Riptide's a better pick than Enigma, although we could see some breakouts. I'm going to put Enigma in the middle of A tier. I think that, and the position in A is kind of predicated on a decrease in Zen. I still think there'll be 20% Zen at the Pro Tour. But maybe it's not 25, and maybe that 5% actually matters, and it could be the difference between, Enigma player winning one more game, whatever the case may be. And maybe they found a way. Maybe being very good into a lot of the heroes is good enough, and then to just dodge the 20%. Illusionist players have been living that life for quite some time, so business as usual, right? So I'm going to put Enigma in the middle of A. Now, New is the most interesting hero out of all of them because she's had the most drastic evolution over the past 5, 6, 7 weeks. In the beginning, she had an astronomical representation that was almost rival. It actually was sometimes beating Zen, right? There were a lot of tournaments that she was literally more represented than Zen, but she wasn't winning shit. She wasn't doing anything, right? And once again, New is one of those decks where you really need to know what you are trying to target. And once you find something that you're trying to target, you can build your deck. Smoke was a great example, right? Using that scale peeler was great innovation, right? And that's kind of what New needed. New needed scale peeler and people to put that together and be able to attack Zen and really solidify that matchup. However, New is one of those matchups where New gains so many percentage points if the opponent does not know the matchup. And what I'm referring to specifically are those situations where you just really need to let that on hit affect. You need to look at your hand and say, if this is gone, I can do this. If this is gone, I can do this. If this is gone, whatever. And you play out all your lines, right? And as long as you can produce decent value doing so, no matter what card is taken, 9 times out of 10, you can actually outvalue a New that actually gets into your hand. Because a lot of their cards literally just don't do a lot of damage. And I think that New kind of got the spotlight toward the tail end of national season. I think people have spent most of the time post nationals in the past week or two working on the New matchup. And so I think there will be a lot of New representation at nationals, but I have a little bit of a hot take. I think she's not going to perform as well because I think people are going to come prepared. I think people are going to realize that maybe you need a little bit more than just a couple snags in the sideboard. Do you even need the snags? Is playing the snags giving is it the T-bone effect, right? Are you handicapping yourself by not playing a good blue card just to play? There's so many different decisions. I think really strong players that are going to obviously be at the Pro Tour are going to put the time into learning that matchup and narrowing down the lines that can just beat New on a turn value basis. And I think the hero will underperform at the Pro Tour. Will there be one in top 8? Probably, just off of representation. But we're not going to see 3 or 4. Even if it's the most played deck. Even if it's the second most played deck. I just think statistically over the end of Nat season, she will underperform relative to that time period. And so I'm going to put her don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not going to... She's still a really good deck. I just think she's going to do a little bit worse. I think people are going to really learn what beats New. But she's still a really strong deck. So I'm going to put her at either the top of A or second. I'm not sure. KO is definitely better pick. I know for sure. She's definitely better than B tier. But I kind of like this placing behind Aelia. And Aelia is a little bit of a hot take. When I say the math on her over Nat season was horrendous, it was astronomically bad. So it is actually a hot take of her being there. So we're going to double down and do that. And then obviously we can't have this, so we have to fix that. We have to make it even because it just bothers me. I don't know. I don't like it. So let's just double check, kind of run down the list and kind of see where we're at. So we got Zen still being theoretically the best deck. I really believe that to be true. I think Prism attacks the meta in a unique way that really, I mean, let's just look at the top decks, right? Like coin flip here. I think you're really good here, depending on the strategy. This is perfectly fine. Free win. Good here. And kind of a coin flip here. Bad here and 50-50. So you're really like just 50-50 into everything. And then you have like one bad matchup and then like a couple good ones. So overall, really solid spread. Really solid spread. Victor up 2 spots and ship it. I don't hate that. Like putting him there. Maybe it's, I can't put him over Riptide. Honestly. I know that sounds crazy. I could put him over Enigma though. I can get on board with that. Riptide C tier for sure. I would know. I play him all the time. No shot. No shot. Kano auto wins into Riptide, so he is bad. Right? No. That's not the case. I basically went in with the thought process of Kano's representation is on the decline. And so I don't think that's going to hurt Riptide as much as we would think. KO isn't S tier. I promise you that. I don't know. We looked at all right, let's go over it, right? You're solid into Prism. As long as you respect it and you have like numbskulls or whatever the case may be, like as long as you respect the matchup, I think it's fine. You're an underdog here. No lie. You know, it might be a small margin like 45-55 or that's probably pretty accurate. This is fine. Let's actually take it a step further. Let's dig into this one. I want to make sure I'm right. I don't want to fuck around with my S tier. Let's look at the spread here. All right, so we're showing an underdog into Aelia, which is an A tier. That's a problem. But we're strong. We're down into Dash. We knew that. Warriors are relevant. This is wrong. Well, I don't want to say this is wrong. But if it's ward base, it's like a shit matchup. But if it's attack action, you're fine. So it probably, if you were to average that, but you can't really average that because there's strictly one better than the other, and that's what's going to show up. So you're gambling this matchup. Kano, I think it's actually kind of rough, me personally, for KO. Let's see. New, I think is about as close to a 50-50 as you can get. At least that's how I felt about the matchup. We've already talked about how you're favored into Prism if you respect it. Riptide's not that bad. Close to 50-50. Slightly unfavored. And then, like we said, we're unfavored into Zen. I mean, you're like just solid into everything. You're beating Victor. Like, how is this not a play? Like, if you wanted to walk into the room and you didn't want to like hard lose to anything, this is the deck you bring. Right? You win here. You slightly lose here. You're a slight underdog, almost 50-50, 50-50, 50-50, 50-50 almost. Slight underdog maybe. and then you beat the shit out of him, and depending on which version of it, like, it's the most 50-50 deck ever. So just be the better player, I guess, or win your scabs roll. I don't know. Just joining, gotta say, this is closest to agreeing with any of your meta tier list. Thank you. I don't know if that's an insult or a compliment. I don't know. To be honest, this list looks good, but I think Vinnie might be a bit high. I'm strictly going off of, actually, now that I mention it, Dashio should be above Vinnie because Dashio's just proved it. But yeah, I do think Vinnie is B tier. I just caught that with my eye. Should be below Dashio. I know Dashio is better than Vinnie, but I think Redline Vinnie specifically is better than all of these heroes, me personally. But yeah, I think I'm gonna keep KO in S tier. Like, all right, so what's the alternative? Do we go to new? Right? Is new, or do we go to Aelia? Is Aelia the next S tier contender? Right? So we would go to Aelia and we would say, okay, you're kind of 50-50 into everything, but you lose to Prism and you lose to Victor. Slightly unfavored into new. I guess Aelia kind of has like the same matchup spread as KO. Does it? God dang it, Jason. Are you right? All right. Is Aelia better into Zen than KO? Answer is yes. KO better into Prism, but there's more Zen than Prism. This is worth twice as much. They're both about the same into new. Aelia might be a little bit better. Kano's kind of irrelevant because of the small percentage, but God damn it, Jason. You're right. You're right mathematically. Golly. Oh, so I referred to the Nats data. Yeah, her Nats performance was horrendous, right? However, I'm a Sandscour Bow believer. I think it's coming for the Pro Tour. I really do. I think it has a way to kind of attack the meta in a unique way. Even if you can find a list that can kind of pivot, would be like, put some respect on my boy Viscera. Might be susceptible to mention fatigue in such a large event. I don't think somebody will find some version of fatigue that's viable into Zen, but if somebody does find it, it'll only be like a group of 5. I'm not saying that fatigue will be non-existent at the Pro Tour. What I am saying is it will be reduced to a very small percentage of the room. So yes, you are right, but I think it's such a low percentage that I said it during a couple streams ago. I was like, if somebody can find a deck that doesn't have high power blues that can fatigue Zen, you have the best deck in the room. You have the best deck in the room. If somebody can find that deck and it doesn't absolutely fold into Illusionist. Why was her Nat so bad though? Is something wrong meta-wise? So there were a lot of people that were not realizing that Battering Bolt is literally disgusting in this meta. If you were not on 3 of them, you simply were wrong. And some people were, some people weren't. But yeah, Zen Eats a Ban is still the best hero. I hate to say it. Won't be surprised if new hits #1 representation. If it doesn't, it will be 2 behind Zen. Yeah, of course. Her representation isn't going anywhere, but don't think she's one of the best decks. I think people are going to come ready. We are seeing a new effect like Elsa at Worlds. A lot of really good players are defaulting to that deck. Yeah, but I don't think they are. I think they're fixing Zen. Oh, mental fatigue. Oh, okay. Just tuned in. Gotta watch how new is not S tier. Second most nats. So my thought process, Shane, was good to see you, by the way. Basically my thought process was that new is one of those gains a lot of equity by the opponent not understanding the matchup, and I think a lot of people are gonna go to the Pro Tour ready. Kind of, I guess, like the Darthia effect, right? That kind of thing. So it's funny that you mentioned that, Jason. I actually said it when I put Bravo there. I said I don't know if you were here for it, but I was like, fatigue Bravo. It's gonna show up, and it's actually, if it does show up, is like A tier. But the problem is, like, you have to find something. It has to be Zen, and I'm not sure. But I did mention that when I placed him specifically. I said if somebody can figure it out, somebody can find the Fatigue Bravo list that doesn't fold to Prism, because it's obviously going to lose to Enigma and Kano. But if it doesn't, like, you're going to beat New if you have staunches and stuff. You're going to beat KO because they're not going to be expecting it. And with staunches and stuff, you're probably going to beat Aelia. And if you can survive Zen, I think you probably have the best deck in the room. I 100% agree. Yeah, I mentioned that when I placed Bravo there. But I haven't seen that. I can conceptualize and theorize on what that could be, and 100% believe that it could literally, like, win the Pro Tour if somebody can find the way to fatigue good Zen players. But it's all riding on that. It's literally all riding on that. I got sent a list recently that is terrifying. If someone has to do it, it can shock me. I mean, yeah. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised. I think that's where we're gonna put it. I know the Aelia and S tier goes against the data, but man, I believe in it. I believe in it. It beats Zen just like what was beating? But Terra could become a don't let. I think Terra could be a Majestic in the expansion slot, the adult one of Rosetta. If anything, I think KO should have stayed in S and Prism should have been moved to A. In the most unbiased way possible. So if you took an average Prism player, I'm 100% agreeing with you. Like, not even close. However, I've just been scarred by what the great ones can do. I think the deck can do it. I think the deck can just do it. Doesn't Bolton almost farm the S tier? Combo is way better into Zen post armory deck and Bond's nerf. So I don't think that the combo is good enough into Zen. I think it's still Zen favored. Into so are we talking about a switch deck? And if you're switching, well, that's the thing. You have to be a switch deck, which means you're going to lose some percentage points, right? Because you can't combo New. That's just going to be a nightmare. You don't want to combo Aelia. It's not where you want to be. You can, but it ain't pretty. And yeah. So I think you have to go like, I don't think you can just bring a, I don't see it. And then combo's not beating Aelia, so I don't know. There's no version of Bolton, period, that beats Aelia. Period. I don't care how, unless it's like hardcore decimator fatigue. That's the only one that stands a chance. And even that, if it's a really skilled Aelia, it shouldn't be a problem. Or Levi getting pushed down in 8 simply to make it even. I think she's A tier. I think she's A tier. But I literally had her right there, and it just bothered me, so I had to move her down. Is she better than Enigma? Let's ask yourselves that question. Better for Levia. Better for Levia. Better. Probably the same. Better for Enigma. Better for Enigma. Probably same. Better for Levia. Better for Enigma. Yeah, it's about the same. They're like the same. I don't think it really matters who's over what. It could be. I mean, they're like the same. I can't put them on top of each other. You could do them interchangeable. As far as matchup spread's concerned. Actually, because Zen's the most represented, yeah, I think we can do that because just being better into Zen on a percentage basis, because he's going to be more of the field, makes more sense. Yeah. Yeah. Although Enigma being better into Zoo or better into New is interesting. It's interesting. Tier lists are hard. I don't know, chat, if anybody's got experience making them. They're very difficult. There's a lot of moving pieces. And to be fair with Aelia, you're putting her in S tier based on conceptual list that very few, if any, people are playing right now. Earlier, you said you weren't going to do that with Bravo. So I'm so I kind of agree with what you're saying. The difference is, right, is like a normal Bravo list is absolute shit, right? Whereas like a normal Aelia list is probably at the top of A tier. I don't think that's like crazy, right? So it's not hard to like move her up a tad on a conceptual idea, right? Is kind of my thought process. And to be honest, the reason that she is in S tier and KO is not on the conceptual Sand Scour Great Bow. But we literally went over the matchup spread, right? Like against Prism, you would rather be KO. Aelia, you'd rather be, or against Zen, you'd rather be Aelia, which is going to be 20% of the field. So you get way more points here than you do here. Against New, you would much rather be Aelia, right? Than KO. Not much, but like a little bit. And this right here could be 40% of the meta, or at least 30 guaranteed. And yeah, and then you're about same here, and here you would rather be KO. Like just matchup spread wise, I think Aelia has to be over KO. Even throwing the Sand Scour Great Bow in the trash. Tier list are easy. Put Vinnie in S. Everyone else in D. I tell you what, she's making progress. She got into B for balling. I think it's totally up in the air how good Bolton becomes after the armory deck. 100%. It's still got to get worked out, right? If anybody's going to figure it out, it's going to be Ellie, right? Or Josh. Hey, I think Sandscour's got it. I'm a believer. I'm a believer in Sandscour. It'll be a small group that brings it if they do. I don't know of anybody bringing it. I'm just saying most of the Aezelias will be on Death Dealer that show up. Watch out for them Sand Scours. They're going to get you. If you were going, would you play the strongest deck, the deck that targets the strongest deck, or the deck that targets the deck? That's a lot of decks. So historically, I've always played the deck that targets the best deck. That's historically what I've always done. When it's not Runeblade. And in this meta specifically, I think I thought like a far out, I wanted to play Kano would be like my pick. I was like a while out though. That was like before Nats, basically. I was like, I think Kano's the pick for Pro Tour. And then as things kind of developed, I thought that I'd probably bring Zen, if I'm being honest. I think that it's just got too good of a matchup spread. Still. The Aelia list has not really changed since Brody's Amplus. Yeah, they've just added the battering bolts. 100% though. Any reason old Dash isn't A tier? It seems. So the reason for that is I explained it why I put her there. It was based on the premise of the cat's out of the bag, and people are gonna not over respect T-Bone and lose value based on that. And people just know what they're playing into. So I think that it's going to lose. A deck like that gets a lot of percentage points by kind of coming out of nowhere. And so that's what I'm basing it on. Also, there's going to be a lot of new, and the new matchup is not where you want it to be. And there might be a decent number of Victor trying to pick on the Zen. Yeah, exactly. Exactly what Jacob said. Dash is a lot worse now because she's not getting free wins because people running AB2 in the finals. Exactly. I'm personally between Aelia and KO. I think both are a fine pick. I think they're both very respectable. I think it's just what do you want to lose to kind of thing. Simple as that. But I think we're going to lock that in. I think that that's what we're going to have. So I think it'll be a good one. I think Jersey's going to kind of I think Jersey is a CC event, right? And it'll give us our first look at the meta. I'm not personally going to justify the tier list based off of those results because obviously some people are going to be holding some things back, and that's going to kind of invalidate the data a little bit. But it'll be a solid point of like just a direction of where people are kind of where their heads are kind of situation. And I'm very interested to watch it, see what happens. And yeah, Pro Tour in what, like a week and a half? It's coming up quick. And that's going to be the tier list. Simple as that. And I just want to thank everybody for joining me. I really, really do appreciate it. And we got skirmish season coming up after the Pro Tour, I believe, in August, if I'm not mistaken, with some badass promos. Old Foil Channel Mount Heroic? Could we get an LL tier list or skirmish season at some point? I can do that. So one thing that I've always advocated on my content specifically is I require I don't claim to always be right or know everything. Hell, earlier during the stream I said you could activate Reiner's hero ability on your opponent's turn. I don't claim to know everything, but I really strive to know about what I'm talking about. And I simply don't play LL. I don't play Blitz. And so basically me making a tier list, I have the feeling of I would just be trying to like farm content or something like that. I would have that feeling because I wouldn't be speaking with like in-depth knowledge, research, or whatever the case may be. However, what I can maybe do is bring people in, get their opinions, stuff like that. That is something that I can possibly do. It's a lot of logistic work, but I'll put out some feelers, see what people are interested in doing and stuff like that, and maybe we can do something. Um, but definitely. How does the Prism potentially beat Zen? It's like a very snowballing matchup where like one person just always loses in like 20 kind of situation. The Heralds are really quick and tier list of every fab here decided exclusively by vibes. Yeah, that's exactly what I don't want to do. Like Stubby Zen Stubby Zen is probably the best deck in format. I would probably Zen historically does not care about frostbites because you run 30 blues and you have the chess piece as well. Blitz is the superior format. That is false. that is false. I do know that. I do know that. I had a surprising amount of fun playing Blitz sides in Canadian Nats. Yeah, it's a fun format that does something a very specific way, but it's not better. It's not better. Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining me for another stream. I really do appreciate it. Thank all of you. And yeah, if you have any events, if you're going to Jersey this weekend, absolute best of luck. And for anybody that is traveling early for Amsterdam, please travel safe and best of luck at that event as well. I'm actually excited to watch the coverage live. This is the first tier 4 event that I will not have gone to. And I'm actually really excited to like engage in chat and like talk with people in chat and stuff and like watch the production. Because like I've always like played the events and I'd go back and watch a couple matches that interested me and stuff like that. But I never got to like truly appreciate the production and stuff like that. So I'm really excited for that. To be able to like sit back and like just watch a really big tier 4 event. I'm really excited to see how it plays out. So thanks everybody for joining me. Really do appreciate it. And I will see. Learning curves. Next episode probably dropping on Friday, going over macro strategies. Just want to throw that out. I forgot about that. I was a little bit late this week. I want to make sure it's done right. So the next learning curves episode will drop at the end of this week. Easy.